So flying over at 30,000 feet or driving through it in an AC team bus with police escort front and back is not experience in India. And re-energize myself just with family. So if you're on the go constantly, as long as, even now in the work that I'm doing in Goa, I keep coming back even for one day.
Understand each personality and then adapt your strategy accordingly to bring out their strengths and embrace their weaknesses.
We all want to do the sexy thing. We all want to land a big deal. But in cricket, it's not going to be your day every day. I was somebody who was seen to have retired from the game at the top of my career. So he'd never moved from backward point. How can you put him anywhere in the same category as these guys?
Welcome to yet another episode of the Champions Podcast. My name is Monish Shah and I'm the founder and CEO of Dreamset Go. I'm in Goa today to talk to one of my favorite fielders in the world, an individual that has inspired the last 3 generations to become amazing fielders. I'm excited to chat with him in his house in Goa. Let's go. Hey Jonty.
How are you?
How are you?
Good, nice to see you.
Thank you so much for hosting us in your house.
Pleasure. Welcome to
Looking forward to this chat.
Please come through.
Jonty, thank you for welcoming us in your home. You're like India's international son. You spent so much time in the country. You've embraced it. You live in Goa. In this village, in between Goans, and you've become one of them. So, I'd love to understand a little bit about your life in India. But just before we go there, right, I wanted to kind of take this opportunity. I'm born in '84. I was super passionate about watching cricket in the 90s. I've loved cricket all my life. But in the 90s, right, when anybody spoke about fielding, it was Jonty Rhodes, right? I've played a lot of crickets in the streets, in the grounds. Anybody took a catch, it would always be like, well done, Jonty Rhodes, right? Anybody dropped it, would say, learn something from Jonty Rhodes, right? So you pretty much became synonymous to the word fielding.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an honor for me to be sitting here and having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
And I'm loving what you're doing here in Goa, loving what you're doing with your life, with your family. I think there's just so much to learn. There's a lot of inspiration there. And I want our listeners to just get to know you a little better through this chat, right? So let's start off first with getting to understand why India. Tell us a little more about your life in India and this amazing setup you've got in Goa.
Sure. Monish, thank you. And great to have you. I mean, it's quite interesting because we don't live in AC. I spend a lot of time flying around and living in hotels for work. And when we come home, we've just, we rent a small home throughout the year. We don't live here during the monsoon because it's not monsoon proof. But it's been amazing because my journey through India started in 1993 as a cricket player. And we used to hate touring India. The South African team, we didn't have much spin to play against in South Africa. Our wickets were always pacey and with bounce. So when you came to the subcontinent and India in particular, we used to really struggle against the bowling, and we would struggle traveling. Some of the tier 1 cities in those days, in the early 90s, were a lot smaller than what they are now. The infrastructure wasn't what it is today. The service was always incredible. The people always embraced the South African cricket team. But as a cricket player, you pretty much locked yourself in your room. You went to the ground, you went to the hotel, and then you went to the airport, and that was the sum total of India. You would literally fly over India.
Yeah.
And it was only when I started coaching in the IPL, and 2009 was my first season, but that shifted to South Africa. So from 2010 onwards, I learned to ride a motorbike firstly, which was the first thing. So 2 wheels in India. I've ridden on a bicycle, but getting out on a motorbike was somewhere I could now experience India on the ground. So flying over at 30,000 feet or driving through it in an AC team bus with police escort front and back is not experience in India. And I know as cricket players, it's quite tough to get out because there's no peace and quiet. But for me, having grown up in apartheid era South Africa, which basically segregated people on their race and the color of their skin, I've discovered, and I'm somebody who my journey is not over because I've retired from cricket. Doesn't mean that's it. And I've stopped learning and growing. I've really discovered that the more you learn about other people, the more you learn about yourself. So every time I come to India, it's a pathway for me to learn more about myself and to grow as an individual. Because everyone talks about, this diversity, from state to state in India, but within the states in India, there's such diversity. So we stay in Agonda, in a fishing village, down the road in Talpona, in Palolem and Putnam. It's all slightly different and unique too. So from that perspective, coming here as a family, again, we don't visit. I mean, we really are on the ground in India. And I think, we talk about cricket teams and business teams. Some of the catchphrases or catchwords are kind of agility, the ability to pivot and don't be stuck and set in your ways. And I think having small children, where we've lived in Sweden for 2.5 years, we've then shifted to Goa. It's our second year of being here in the winter. And watching our kids embrace and just be in the moment is pretty much what you almost need as an adult. We forget that we can learn from our children. We always try to instruct them and give them lessons. And seeing them adapt to various places and communities has been lessons for us as adults too, my wife and I. So, Melanie and I have been very grateful because we've always watched them. We watch the children very emotionally, very closely. Yeah. Just see, are they settled? Are they comfortable? And and then we continue because we asked them, give us 3 months. This was last year, 23, 24 in November, December. Just give us 3 months. See if you handle the settling in Goa. Try, and from day one they were in. Because there was no preconceived ideas about what they were going to get. It was okay. Let's get to India. Let's get to Goa, and just see what happens. Yeah. So I think from that point of view, we've got into the community. The first 2 weeks was a bit busy with selfies and autographs and things, but now we're a part of the village here.
That's amazing.
And, we really do feel like we're part of the community.
And what are the kids loving the most? Is it surfing, going out to the woods? What are they loving?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think what they've really enjoyed. I mean, my wife's an architect and she's also a yoga teacher. So for us, this community is quite easy to settle in. But Nathan is 7 years old. He does not wear shoes at all. So I think he loves the school environment. It's in the jungle.
Oh, wow.
They've got sort of there's a volleyball mud court, there's a mud football, mini football, like 5-a-side court, and that's the sum total of their sports facilities. But it's in the trees, so no uniform, no shoes. He hasn't worn shoes since he's been here for 4 months. Okay. He's got a layer of skin. Like, I can't walk where he walks barefoot. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. So he just loves this little community. He's got friends. I mean, you'll see on the beach here, there's these little packs of stray dogs sometimes, and he's like a stray puppy. He's got these group of friends, and he loves that sort of freedom. Because in South Africa, we're concerned about their safety. We don't just let them go where they want to go. And they pretty much play in the backyard in South Africa unless we then go take them to the beach or take them out. Yeah. So the freedom of that, we don't know where they are half the time. India, she's got 1 or 2 really good friends, but just being able to sit down, they draw, they read. We don't have a television anywhere.
That's amazing, right?
We didn't tell them we had Wi-Fi for 3 weeks because I do a lot of, briefings online, and I'd have to go to one of the very few 5-star resorts, so 20 minutes drive away, and book out their business center. So eventually we said, okay, we can't keep doing this or go down to the cafe. It's too noisy. So we put the Wi-Fi in, but for 3 weeks almost, we didn't tell them that there was Wi-Fi in the house. So I think from a point of view where there's downtime, because it's too hot to be outside. So when they come home from school, we literally sit on the floor. It's the coolest part of the house. And it's for them, it's time just to settle, because in South Africa, they are really busy. They got sport at school every afternoon. India plays either football or netball or cricket. Yeah. Nathan's playing rugby and cricket. So when we bring them back, we get an hour to just unwind, and they read and they draw, and then we go down to the beach. So I think that sort of freedom, where there's no adults hovering, so there's the parental helicopter, which is when you're concerned about their safety. Back in South Africa, we always got an eye out. What are they doing? Where do they want to go? We have to then go with them. So I think the freedom that they have here in Goa is something that both of them are really enjoying.
Amazing. Jonty, I want to understand you a little more as an individual and, the ways of your living, the ways of your thinking. the first impression I get when I walk into your house is there seems to be embracing minimalism as a concept. You've done phenomenally well in your life. You've achieved the highest success in terms of international cricket. You are doing very well as an entrepreneur. All the corporate coaching classes and lessons and everything that you're doing, but it seems like you're living in a particular way which is out of choice. I'd love to understand your thought process behind that, and is that for the self? Is that for the kids? Just some insights, because it's quite inspiring.
It's interesting because I think it's less about for the self. I mean, I'm not driving it. My wife is definitely driving it. So I've always been a team player.
Yeah.
Whether I was 12th man or in the team, I always wanted to do things for the team. So while I'm out here and there's opportunity for work in India, especially, that the sort of the family unit is definitely driven by my wife, because she's the one that's obviously sacrificed career. She's hands-on all the time, often a single parent, and being mother and father to 6 kids in Sweden for 2.5 years, in India when I'm working. And I think from a point of view where I'm not the backup guy, but I'm certainly embraced the way that she wants to live. And it's been from day one that we've met. So it's her father's a doctor. She studied medicine year 1,
Wow.
and then just decided that's it. Okay, medicine for us is going to be nutrition, and we're going to make sure that we invest in our children's sort of health and wellness by buying well and understanding where the food comes from, so they can eat anything in the house. Everything that we've sourced is we've given thought and maybe paid a little bit more. So yeah, I'm not going to spend money on a fancy house. I would rather spend money on organic products that I know my children are going to benefit from. And there's no concerns for us about steroids or what's been put in the food, how it's been sort of grown. So our investment is more in the lifestyle, as opposed to in the fixed assets. I mean, we have property back in South Africa, and as an architect, my wife has renovated them. 2 of them are heritage homes, and it was quite a process. But sort of the passion that she has for that was an enjoyable, a really enjoyable project. But the investment in the family is certainly Melanie's. Not just her doing. I certainly back it up, but from her understanding, she does a lot of research into what's going into our systems, what is happening on a global scale. And I think from that perspective, I'm the 12th man when it comes to the family's amazing, health and wellness.
You seem like such a great partner in any form of...
Melanie, did you hear that?
I think any form of partnership, it's important to respect each other, give and take, whether it's a professional partnership or a personal partnership. So it's great to get those insights. Talking about the family, right? Let's move into understanding a little more about your childhood, right? So how different was your childhood from what your children are getting now? And a lot of our personalities get shaped when we are young, right? A lot of our thought process gets kind of defined when we are young with the environment that we grow up in. And as you grow older, in order to make a very strong shift, there has to be a lot of unlearning to then grow and learn further, right? So just want to understand, have you been through a journey like this? Tell us a little more about your childhood and how different has it been from your children?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really valuable lessons for me from my childhood, because firstly, my father was a school principal, and we grew up as 3 boys in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. Also, teachers didn't have big salaries. Both my parents were teachers.
Yeah.
So discipline was a massive part of the Rhodes brothers growing up. My father, because there were 600 boys at the school, he just didn't have patience and the energy left, to talk to us or sit down. So I think that was the one unlearning that I had to go through, was that discipline is not about just laying down the law. Discipline is respecting everybody. And not that my parents didn't respect us, but just different ways of treating your own children.
Yeah.
So that was a massive unlearning for me, because I just had, my father's, and he was consistent every time. You know, he never, today he wasn't the disciplinarian. It was, you knew what you were going to get from my dad.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the parents in Pietermaritzburg, where we grew up, was a small town. They loved my dad because he would discipline their children at the school. You know, so he was kind of a guy that there was no mucking about, but every day it was consistent. So you knew what you were going to get. And I think that was an important lesson. But from a point of view where I grew up in apartheid South Africa, there was no diversity. It was kind of one way, and there was it. And I didn't have a passport until I went to play in the World Cup in 1992. So up until then, I was studying at university. I was playing state hockey, state cricket, 6 months and 6 months, struggling to get through my exams, fit that all in. I mean, you'd think with parents who were teachers, they would force you to, do your work. And they were way more concerned about, okay, so how do you balance everything? Get everything in balance.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to my parents for that perspective, because I had epilepsy as a young boy. So I got concussed very easy. So no grand or massive seizures walking down the street. If I got bumped on the head, I'll get knocked out. I'll wake up nauseous, vomiting, headache, sleep for, on and off for almost a whole day. So my parents were concerned, because in the 80s, in fact, this is in the 70s, not much was known about epilepsy in South Africa. And now trying to play sport, I was the first kid to wear a helmet in the whole country. No one else had a helmet. I was 12 years old now. I had to wear a cricket helmet. So now in South Africa, and probably globally, the rules, if you're playing leather ball, you have to wear a helmet. Even if you're at practice, if you're a wicket keeper. So that was, I grew up in this environment where my parents could have been really protective, and they just said, hold on, you have epilepsy. If you know your limitations, so you're not going to play rugby because you could be at the bottom of this very physical game. You play cricket, there's risk, but just get you a helmet. Even fly, buy through a sports shop from the UK. Forced me to play hockey. It forced me to play football.
Yeah.
Tennis, I was always going to play. But those sports actually allowed me to become the fielder that I became.
Yeah.
Because it was all lateral movement. So anything to do with hockey and football, I then was a goal scorer, and all the lessons, because we never had a fielding coach.
Yeah.
So I kind of burst onto the scene, and all I was doing was just emulating what the goalkeepers were doing to try to keep the ball out of the net when I was coming, into the circle or into the box. So it was amazing that a lot of what my parents did, and because my dad was the first one as the principal to the school, the last one to leave, we had the option, go do your homework with the boarders or go play. We just played sport, and every sport, because every season, every term, it changed.
Yeah.
So my upbringing was around a sports field. My dad was also a referee. My two brothers, my younger one was a really talented cricket player, tennis player, rugby player. My older brother was more into sailing and canoeing. So there was real diversity amongst us.
Yeah.
And we were all very competitive, but my parents were just very supportive. So even they would, on school holidays, go down. My brother was playing a rugby tournament, and we would all go and support him. Or I was playing a cricket tournament, they would all come support me. So we stuck together really close as a family. So some great lessons, very valuable lessons. But as I said, the unlearning for me was the discipline. I was grateful because as a cricket player, you need discipline.
Absolutely.
That consistency comes with the discipline and the dedication. But things like resilience, allowing sort of psychological safety, another big buzzword in corporate. And that for me was always, as a cricket player, was having freedom to fail. But as a kid, as a child growing up, my dad, there was one way of doing things, and that was it. And it was kind of his way. And the irony is that my first captain for South Africa, Kepler Wessels, he was a bit like having my dad as the captain, because Kepler had played for Australia. He was the only one with international experience. So he was telling us not only what to do, but how to do it.
Correct.
And then Hansi Cronje took over from that, where he had a team with 40 or 50 games experience. The senior players now had their own understanding of how things worked. So it was interesting, because my dad's discipline and strict way of sort of doing things made my transition into South Africa a lot easier, because having a captain that told me what to do, I was actually more comfortable than, okay, Jonty, find a way. But it's been a massive unlearning for me, is giving my children way more freedom to find their own way.
Yeah. And it's amazing, you played so many sports growing up, right? You said cricket, tennis, soccer, hockey, and you nearly represented your country twice at the Olympics in 92 and 96. So, I've got two young children. My daughter's 10, my son's 9. And I'd love some kind of inspiration in terms of, because sports also unites a family.
Yeah.
You play sports together, you support your children when they are playing sports. Is there any inspiration that we can draw from your upbringing, and how do we kind of ensure that kids can play multi-sport, because you were amazing at so many different sports, and what kind of advice should parents like me take back?
Well, I think what is important is that, I think we were successful because we played so many sports, and because there was no country, and cricket sport wasn't a business at that stage. So I know in India there's a lot of focus on, you get your studies, whether it's doctor, engineering. A lot of the time, kids, they want to get them into colleges, not only in the top ones in India, but abroad in the US or maybe even in the UK. But so there's a real pressure environment to do well, whether it is at school now academically, but now there is an opportunity for kids to turn sport into a business. And my biggest concern is at such an early focus, because it is about passion and loving, because there is no shortcut. So if your children are going to be successful at something, they are going to have to work hard. For some people in certain areas, especially in areas of their passion, that work comes easily. Or that fine-tuning and refining a skill comes easy. And I think what was important is that we were given, cricket for me was such a nerve-wracking game. I used to throw up playing state cricket. I was so nervous before I used to go and batting at number 6 in the team, that I would literally go and throw up in the toilet before having to go out to bat. So in the field, there was no pressure, because you drop a catch, I could catch the next one. Sure, disappointed.
Yes.
But it wasn't the be-all and egg chance, sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
So, even playing tennis, I used to love doubles, not singles. So even that was a team, and not cricket, you're on, batting I was always on my own. It felt like it, even again in a team environment. So I think from that point of view, what advice can I give? Firstly, not to hover over your children. I think give them space that's how you learn.
Yeah.
You tumble, you fall. We have a trampoline at home, so it's great exercise. It also toughens the kids up. They learn to fall, they learn to roll. And, it's actually...
And such is life, right? You fall and you rise,
And I think it's not about, not getting knocked down. It's about staying down. But, you can get knocked down 9 times, but as long as you get up 10 times, then you're actually on the right path.
Yeah.
So I think from a point of view, advice to parents, that if someone especially asks me where's the best academy to send my 7 years old, come on, man, let them play. Just because that is important. If you start really early and it's just discipline, and sacrificing everything else, I think it's way too soon to start that. So let children evolve and develop, find their own passion and their own path.
Yeah, I asked a similar question to Saurav Ganguly when I was at his house the other day, and he said, and I was taking advice for my son, and he said, you know what, until they're 12, let them just play. Right, and then post that, they'll figure out what they like, and they'll automatically find their way. So, when was that time in your childhood that you knew that you wanted to become a professional cricketer, and you wanted to pursue this a little more seriously?
Well, there wasn't at all, and that's honestly, there wasn't. There was no country to play for. So I finished school, no country to play for. The only professional idea that I had around sport, I had an uncle living in the UK, and I loved my football. So I was hoping that he could. And that's the one thing I'm grateful. My parents, as teachers, said, hold on, okay, so we talk about balance. So yes, you're good at football. And that's the irony. I was a cricket player, but I'm seen as a cricket player, but my hero as a young kid was Pele.
Yeah.
And again, another irony is that in South Africa, in the white government, black people were considered of a lesser class. And whereas my hero, my idol, was a black man from Brazil.
Yeah.
And, so the only professionalism that I had ever thought about was maybe going to the UK, joining an academy, and then playing club. Because for Manchester United, Gary Bailey was the goalkeeper, and so he was a South African who had moved to the UK, and we would always, the TV that we had was, if there was any sport and we were watching him, we would watch for the first 10 minutes, and then we would go out and play. But he was always, it can be done in South Africa. That's the way you could circumvent the sporting and economic sanctions. So never a thought of, okay, I'm going to push cricket, I'm going to push hockey, because hockey is still, a lot of the players in South Africa go to the Olympics and they all have to work, or they got to raise their own funds to get there. So it's not a professional sport, hockey, in any sense in South Africa. So it was never a drive, okay, if I work really hard, one day I had to get a job. I've got a Bachelor of Commerce degree, marketing and business administration, economics, and it was because everybody that I was playing with were either working, in a family business or on a sort of as a rep for maybe some of the alcohol liquor companies used to sponsor sport, tobacco companies used to sponsor sport. So just to give them the freedom. So on a Friday we would play 3-day first class cricket, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday night we would fly back, and Monday they were all back at the office somewhere. So it was never a case of, okay, so let me work really hard at my cricket. I was just working hard because I was loving it, and it wasn't a career.
Do you remember the first time that you were picked for the South African squad?
Yeah.
And just walk me through that. I would love to understand, when did that news break out and how did the family take it?
Yeah, so they had obviously the World Cup, the team had come to India in 1991, September, October 1991. And they came for 3 one-day internationals. I think 2 in Kolkata and Eden Gardens. Clive Rice was the captain, packed in the days when 100,000 people would come down and watch. And then they finished the 3rd one-day international, which South Africa managed to win, was in Delhi. But it was actually at an athletics track, because I think it was the only place that had day-night stadium or day-night lights in Delhi at a stadium. And that was in, I think, September, October. And the cricket board, South African cricket board, said, okay, we're going to take 6 young players, Hansie Cronje, Derek Crooks, a spin bowler, myself, 2 or 3 other players. And I just, not to play, but just to come and see what it's like and for the future. And I was writing my exams and said, I'm sorry, I can't come because I'm preparing for my exams. I've got to pass my degree. Yeah. Hansie was also at university, but way smarter than me. So he said, no, he's definitely coming to India. So then at that 1992, so what they did is then before the World Cup, so they just took, because it was September, October, pre-season in South Africa, took all the senior players in state cricket to India. And then they said, okay, so now we've got October, November, December, the season is starting. And January, they had to announce the team in January for the World Cup in 1992, our first ever World Cup. So in the state cricket, I was up and down, doing okay. I was actually at a university game, so playing club cricket for my university, Pietermaritzburg. So my parents were there, and they had a live announcement over the radio. So we were all sitting in the car with the car radio, the whole squad, the Pietermaritzburg University squad, standing around the car, and the amazing thing was they were reading it out in alphabetical order, and they were talking about, because Peter Kirsten had been excluded from the initial squad. And the cricket board had said, no, initially, and I was in that squad, and everyone's going, well, why is Jonty Rhodes in the team? And I'll tell you why I was in the team later. But Peter Kirsten was left out, Jimmy Cook, Clive Rice, and they said, well, if they do well in the 3 months of provincial state cricket, they can make the final 15. So it wasn't if you're not in the first 25, you can't get into it. So they were kind of incentivizing players, work hard, and then get picked in the squad. And they said if someone like Peter Kirsten, he's too old, and Jonty Rhodes can do his job, in the middle order, and Peter Kirsten bowl a bit off spin, but not required. Enough all-rounders in our team. So everyone was in the press was saying, well, if Peter Kirsten gets back in the squad, it would probably be at the expense of Jonty Rhodes. So when they announced it alphabetically, obviously Kepler Wessels, they announced him as the captain, and because that changed from Clive Rice when the team came to India. So no Clive Rice, and then they went through the alphabetical order, and they mentioned Peter Kirsten, so K before Rhodes, and obviously, well, okay, so we're all sitting, the university squad sitting there going, okay, well, that might be a bit of a problem for me, because if Peter Kirsten's there, the one guy that they could leave out is me. Then they went to Dave Richardson in alphabetical order, and I went R-H-O, R-I, so R, they've gone past R-H. So I'm obviously not in the squad. And then they mentioned my name after Dave Richardson. So it was such a turbulent, because initially I thought there's no chance.
Turbulent 30 seconds.
People were just saying, why is Jonty, who is this guy? In state cricket, provincial cricket in South Africa, I wasn't a big name, I was doing okay. But the reason why I got selected was that because Kepler had played for Australia, and in the 90s, most of the cricket venues were multi-purpose stadiums. So they played that Australian rules football, so massive fields. There was no inner boundary. The boundary was actually a cement wall with advertising on it, and you had to learn to slide into the cement wall. And in Sydney, they had the side screen in front on wheels because the boundary was so big. They would have the side screen in the ground in play, and you could run around it and fetch the ball. So that's what Kepler wanted. He wanted the likes of Hansie Cronje and Jonty Rhodes, 2 young athletes, because we were both athletically far superior to a lot of our teammates. just because of the lifestyle. Hansi was a good rugby player. I was obviously playing state hockey. Because Kepler knew, with the thin bats that we had, we used to do one relay throw. So you played the MCG in Melbourne. You couldn't throw from the boundary. I think the late Dean Jones was the only guy, and he used to love chasing the ball to the boundary because he could throw it back without a bounce to the wicket keeper. The rest of us, we would do relay throw. So the fields were so big that Kepler A wanted fast guys in the outfield, so Hansi and myself, and then also fast guys in the middle order. Because once the field was spread, you could then hit the ball in the gaps, run twos, run threes. It was very difficult to hit sixes. You know, the ball to cover, you'd have to almost clear 80 meters. And we didn't have massive bats, and power hitting wasn't something that any of us subscribed to. So we would run hard between the wickets, and that's why we were chosen.
That's amazing. I'm starting to get a little hungry. Should we grab a bite and continue our conversation at the shack?
Well, that's a great thing about Go. I mean, we have the ocean right here, but all along the beach, there are shacks galore. So let's go and have something to eat.
So, Jonty, there's a lot known about you as a cricketer. You're pretty much synonymous to the South African team when it comes to the 90s. You played at the highest standard, international level, World Cups. But there must be a lot of pressure, right? I'd love to understand, like, how did you deal with pressure? And everyone that's listening to this podcast, any advice that you have for them in terms of how to deal with pressure and overcome it? Or maybe use it to your advantage?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, fear and adrenaline are basically the same line. You know, and that's the thing about cricket. When you walk out to bat or to bowl in front of 30,000 people and knowing it's going around the world, being broadcast live, there is definitely pressure on you. And if you succumb to that pressure, it is fear and it inhibits you. So it really does restrict you, tenses you up. Whereas if you use that adrenaline to empower you almost, it takes your performance almost to another level. So being able to draw on experience eventually as a cricket player, which is tough as a youngster, but being able to understand that it's the process that speaks more than the outcome, because there's so many things that you can control in the process, but there's so few things that you control in the outcome, that if you just base your whole cricketing career on how you've performed statistically, not many cricket players are going to look back on their careers and when I had a great career. But if you factor in the process part of that, that's where the discipline is and discipline lies, then that's the only way you can really release yourself from that pressure, because you then have to say, okay, I've done the work, I've done the homework, I've spent time not just practicing, but practicing with a plan, and now it's up to making the right choices, which again comes from the practice. So, but very difficult to separate that, especially even as a young player, you don't have the experience. Suddenly when you have the experience, people are more reliant on you. So maybe the pressure is, it does increase as well. So it never goes away.
I think this is honestly something that everybody can take back into their day-to-day lives, corporate lives, family lives, is do the work well, put in your 100, 120% every single day, and do the grind well, and then kind of leave it up to the universe to kind of help get you towards that outcome.
I was very grateful for my father, again, as a school principal early on in my career, when I was still sort of finishing high school. He just said, he was coaching 9-year-old boys at the school, and he brought me down to the practice one day to help out, and he just said, watch these kids, they run around for 3 hours, red in the face, sweating like crazy, but have they learned anything? Not really, but they've been to practice. And he said, that's a great lesson, because all your teachers, your coaches will tell you that practice makes perfect. And he said, nay, that's half the story, because it's perfect practice that makes perfect. So he would rather see me work for 10 minutes, being match specific, practicing like you're playing a game, rather than 2 hours of practice getting hot. Because cricket's a habit. You're practicing habits. And if you get tired and lazy, you get tired and lazy, that's the habit that you take with you into the game. So he would rather see me practice hard for 10 minutes, but practice perfectly, rather than it's practice that makes perfect.
It's brilliant. So, I feel for any artist to perform at the highest level, they need to get into states where their mind is absolutely blank, right? Like they say in Yoga Sutra, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, means that all the mental modifications of your mind need to be completely quietened, silence for you to perform at the highest level. Did you ever get into flow states when you were fielding, when you were batting, where it was just you and the ball?
It's interesting because, when I was playing cricket, I was a committed Christian, and prayer and faith for me was a big part of what I did, just to be able to release it and just, okay, so I've done the work, whatever happens is going to happen. It's not everything that I can control. And, so from a point of view, I never realized or felt I was in a flow state. It was more a case of trying to fight to just release all the talk that was going on inside my head, because every time a ball is bowled, you need to make a decision. I was very strong on the leg side, and I was looking to sweep and reverse sweep and to cut and to pull, and almost premeditating. So to get that quiet for me was a real battle, because I'm not somebody who sits still very easily. Meeting my wife Melanie, sort of 13 years ago, she did a lot of meditation, and it's been interesting because as a coach, I think I'm a lot less stressed around other people. I still have the same amount of energy, but I've actually learned that energy can drag people down or can lift them up, and it's not the the high excitement energy that necessarily will lift people up. It's more of a calm energy that allows other people to create their own space. So I'm not trying to make everybody like Jonty Rhodes, but allow them to be in the space that they want to be in. So I think from that point of view, on the field, I was never in a flow state, but I just wanted every single ball to come to me. I mean, I really loved my fielding, and I think that was the difference. Where a lot of players are good fielders, but I was always sort of told, the commentators would say, Jonty Rhodes has got great reflexes or good anticipation, and it was all about expecting every ball to come before it came, because then I was ready to go whatever happened. So that's probably the flow state that I achieved, was at wanting every single ball to come to me. I didn't
kind of manifested that.
I didn't have faster reflexes than any, because it would have helped my batting. I mean, my batting was very average. I got dropped for 2 years on the test side because my batting average was less than 28. I had to work on my technique and got back in the side, and then finished strong the last sort of 3 years of my test career. So it was never a flow state when I was batting, but in the field, and you're right, I mean, manifesting every ball, and the fact that I had Alan Donald, Sean Pollock, Lance Klusner, all these guys who were bowling top of foot stump, which was our bowling plan. It meant that backward point gully was always the hot spot. And, so I was definitely in a zone where I was, if the ball didn't come to me, I was quite upset. So the majority of them did.
Two things I'll actually pick up from this conversation right now, right? One is about energy. So I'll come back to that. But just before that, I think you need to give yourself a lot more credit for being an amazing batsman. And I think the whole, one of the earlier people that adopted to the reverse sweep so well, right? I think you knew what your strengths were. And having played all the other sports, you probably knew that if you kind of mended your technique a little bit, you could get a lot more. So I'd love to know a little more about your whole reverse sweeping invention.
Yeah, I mean, as a hockey player, obviously the square shot, cross bat, that cut and pull was something, and even sweeping was, and also because I was low to the ground, it meant I could do the sweep easily. Bob Wilmer was the coach of South Africa between 96 and 1999. And he was the one guy that just, also as a hockey player, he used to come out to South Africa to coach cricket and hockey, and from the UK. And he just said, Jonty, Dermot Reeve in Warwickshire is now playing this reverse paddle, where he would just put his bat and let the ball run fine to short third against the spin. He said, but because you're a hockey player, you could actually hit him. Because I'd really try to work on my technique. I mean, we had Daryl Cullinan, who was, for me, like textbook. Jacques Callis came after that. But in the start of my career, Daryl Cullinan, if you look cover drive, it would be a picture of his cover drive. Cut shot, the same thing. So I was trying to emulate my batting, and I was never going to be another Daryl Cullinan. He was just superb. And I was very much, short, play the square, the pull the reverse. And Bob just said, Jonty, play the reverse sweep. And he gave me the confidence. And it was a case of going, okay, not that I have to be the first guy. For me, it was harder to hit over extra cover than it was to hit the reverse sweep. So yes, playing to your strength. And in business, the same thing applies. You can get your weaknesses, and that's a big issue for me, is that we all look at our weaknesses, and we've got to get, or other people's weaknesses, we've got to get our weaknesses to a certain level. Yes, get them to an acceptable level. But when you're given the opportunity to build on your strengths, then the growth is exponential.
Fantastic. Great. And the second bit we were talking about is energy, right? So you've always been somebody that's had uh, insane amount of energy. I've heard you mention and call yourself Jack in the Box. Uh, but as you grow older and as you start doing multiple things, a lot of energy starts getting invested into different areas of your life and walks of life and family, career, investments, etc. What do you do to kind of keep that energy going and to kind of recharge yourself?
I think that for me, there's a couple of things. Oh, I was going to say energy. Palak Paneer is one of the reasons. I mean, it was so funny. My India was born in Mumbai during the IPL 2015.
Yeah.
And I think my wife ate Palak Paneer every single meal for the last month. And India came out looking a slight tinge of green. And she's the only kid in our family that whenever we have spinach,
she's got the South African color on her.
She licks her plate clean. All the other kids will, why are we having spinach? She loves spinach. And I think it's because Melanie. But I think that the important thing for me is always having a home base.
Yeah.
And that is safe. It's almost like a safe harbor where I come back and re-energize myself just with family. So if you're on the go constantly, as long as, even now in the work that I'm doing in Goa, I keep coming back even for one day. I have dinner with my family, I take the kids to school in the morning, and then I leave again. And just that one day of safe haven is certainly something that has always re-energized me. So spending time with family, and when you're away from home as much as we are, it gets more and more difficult. So it's very important that when I can plug into that, I take full advantage, because it's never going to be quantity time with family, but I ensure that it's the time that we spend together really is quality, because it's beneficial for hopefully my family, but it's massive for me. And I can feel when I'm starting to drain and I need to go home. And
amazing.
It's really amazing.
There's some amazing food stuff now. But yeah, moving back to your cricketing days, right? I'd love to understand, how did you handle the highest highs of your life and the lowest lows? And if you could give me an example each from, when you were at the peak of your success and when you felt you were down and out, and how did you come back?
Yeah, it's interesting, because the lowest of the lows was being dropped from the test team for 2 years. And so it wasn't just one moment. It was 2 years of getting back in the team. I did have to correct my technique, but it was a case of me understanding that it really is worth my while, to invest in myself, to make some adjustments. And because it's a game of habit, it's not going to happen overnight. And just be patient, and not pressurize myself, because again, selection is not something you can guarantee. If I changed my technique and I worked hard enough, then I was going to get back in the test side. And amazingly, my late friend Hansi Cronje, he was the captain of the team. I got dropped from the side. I was still playing all the one-day series, because having a thick outside edge to third slip was actually a useful shot in one-day cricket. I could run there and back. There was never a third slip or a gully. But in test cricket, it was a problem. But Hansi would always phone me up and just keep encouraging me. If I was scoring runs for my state team, just keep saying, keep going, keep going. So it was a long period of the lowest of the lows. But what kept me going was that it's actually worthwhile. I've had a taste and I want to be back in the test side. And I know it's not overnight, and just the perseverance and the resilience. Any championship team or individual is not the player. It's not the player that doesn't fail, because we all fail. It's those that bounce back or find a way around and through the obstacles. Because, for us, it's a big thing about, if you're going to fail fast. So don't be scared to take the chance, make a decision and do something, and then learn from it. Because then, winning or losing, it's still just experience. You win, you learn something. You lose, you learn something. And I think that was important. So that was the lowest of low for me, 2 years of not being in the test team. But the amazing thing was that straight back, my first test series back in was against England in the UK. And I was player of the series, scored 100 at Lords. And that was probably, the pinnacle for me. I got to write on the honours board. You don't write your own name, but I had a piece of physiotherapy plaster, which I put there, Jonty Rhodes, 117, not just a fielder. I think it was, for me, it was more of a case of, okay, so those 2 years of getting back into the team, was sort of validating the patience that I had in the process. And it's not an overnight. I knew it was never going to be overnight, but didn't realize it was going to be a 2-year journey. But scoring that 100 when we were sort of 60 for 4, batting with Hansi, making a difference in that game, getting the name on the board, was a validation of all the hard work and the patience that took me to get there.
And that's it comes back to the previous point that you made, right? It's about just believing the process, and being true to yourself. And
it's just too many uncontrollables.
Right.
I mean, you know, there's a lot that you can do towards success, but nothing is guaranteed. You know, no matter the effort that you put in, you're not rewarded for the effort that you put in. You know, the universe doesn't just, okay, so you owed this. Nobody's owed anything.
Yeah.
So yes, working hard, everybody works hard, but it's again a case of just putting your faith in that process that keeps you sane and allows you to perform at the, you know, sort of peak performance at the best of your ability more often than not.
Jonty, moving forward, I'd love to understand 3 cricketing friendships that you had that were very, very strong, right? And hopefully you can give me one Indian one as well in there.
Yeah, you know, cricketing friendships are interesting because the game really has evolved and changed to sitting in an IPL scenario where you've got players from different countries and different cultures now playing in the same team and, you know, kind of sharing some of the insights and secrets of their fellow countrymen because you're playing against them in the next game. So it has evolved, but for a long period of time, you know, so the friendships that we had were against, you know, the people who you're playing against, or mainly with your teammates. And I grew up with Hansi. We were both young guys. We came onto the scene at the same time, even as 13-year-olds. So I was saying earlier, I had epilepsy. I had to wear a helmet, and you know, Hansi was told in the same the under 13 cricket tournament, go look at that boy with the helmet. He's a good little player. So already at that age, we were competing against each other. We played South African schools together as 17 and 18-year-old boys. He captained the national team. And, you know, we played universities together under 21, 22. So our friendship was forged on the cricket field, but we were also very like-minded from a fit. We were both very health sort of orientated. Without, you know, in the early 90s, it was more driven about what we could afford, you know, as opposed to let's get this and do that. And there was never any biohacking, or we were just, okay, so what can make us the best athletes possible? So Hansi and I grew up together, became really tight. And as I said, he was my captain when I was dropped from the team. And, you know, he wasn't somebody, oh, he's my friend, I got to keep him in. Jonty, earn your place back in. But he kept encouraging me. So, you know, his demise was really unfortunate because he was just kind of getting his life back together. And then Shane Warne, another late great. And he and I, you know, again, young together, 1993, 94, I played against Australia for the first time. And he had just burst on the scene. Didn't have a great start to his career, you know, so he wasn't a big name or superstar, but how our friendship grew was that Kepler Wessels, who had played for Australia, captaining us, just said, guys, we're about to tour Sri Lanka, we're about to go to England, we've never been there before. You know, sit down at the end of the day's play during a 5-day test, go talk to an Australian, you know, just ask them about what's it like, what should I be looking to do, and things like that in the other countries that we'd never been to. And I walked into the dressing room, and it was like, for me, it was Mr. Border because my dad is the headmaster. And because we didn't have international superstars in South Africa due to isolation, if there were any of those sporting magazines, I don't know if you guys got them as kids, but there was always a centerfold poster. You know, so all the cricketing posters were of Ian Healy and Alan Border, the Australian players. And when I walked into the dressing room, I just didn't feel like I could sit down and talk to anybody, just out of respect. And Shane was the only guy who was my age. And he and I hit it off from day one. I mean, we were probably opposite ends of the social scale, apart, but we just connected somewhere in the middle. And he was amazing. A great rivalry on the field because I seemed to do better against Australia than anybody else. And
some of your best catches were also against Australia.
Well, I mean, they bring out your A game. I mean, they're an A game team. So if you want to perform against them, but I think from a batting point of view, we were generally in trouble. So we were 120 for 4. So I was a better player when the team was 124 than if we were 200 for 4 or 240 for 4. So I think my average against Zimbabwe is probably half of what it was against Australia because Australia, we were generally in trouble, or, you know, you had to really focus on that tricky period of play. And no disrespect to Zimbabwe, they had an amazing team in the late 90s. Andy Flower captained them amazingly. But it was that sort of fight in the Australians that brought out the best. So our friendship extended beyond that. We did a lot of commentary work together. Whenever we connected through the commentary work or through the coaching at the IPL, we just kind of picked up. I wasn't on a daily basis in contact with him, because that's not international cricketing friendships. It's just when you're together, it's like you haven't skipped a beat. And yes, a modern friendship that I have through the coaching with an Indian is Sachin Tendulkar. I mean, everybody probably lays claim to poor old Sachin, but he is somebody who, he and I were in the 1992, 93 tour, India tour to South Africa. We were two of the sort of up-and-coming stars in our respective teams, and we did a lot of ribbon cutting together and appearances together for the cricket boards. And then I worked with Mumbai Indians. Obviously, he was still playing at the end of his career, and I had a great time working with somebody and got to see why he was so successful. I mean, talented, yes, beyond doubt, but at table tennis and tennis, so frustrating that he would then play left-handed, but he's actually left-handed. He does right, so he could play table tennis left or right-handed and whip all of us. So a very frustrating guy. But he was so specific in his practice sessions that when in the IPL, if we were playing RCB and Dale Steyn was playing for them, he knew the balls would come past here, and he didn't want to practice hard ball because of his fingers.
Yeah.
So I'm a tennis player. He said, Jonty, please come and serve the ball so it gets steep bounce, so he can practice dropping his hands or playing the ramp shot. So it's so specific in what he wanted to practice, depending on, like I kept saying earlier, practice like, it's not practice
Perfect
that makes
practice.
it perfect practice. So he specified his practice sessions to simulate what is going to happen in the game. And our friendship has been as opponents, as coach and player, and then now as people who are just, I think, have very similar beliefs in life, in that we have been blessed for a reason, and that is to make the place, whether it's on the cricket field or in our communities, better. Than what we found it. And I think we're driven by many of the same motives post-cricket.
Yeah, and in the 90s, if you thought of a batsman, it was Sachin. Thought of a bowler, it was Vaughan.
Yeah.
You thought of a fielder, it was you.
You got the trifecta. Amazing. I mean, that's the irony. I mean, it was such a, there weren't that many cricket teams. It was quite a tight-knit. You played against each other quite a bit, even though there wasn't the IPL, like I said. But yeah. Shane Warne, he tormented us South Africans.
Yeah. And what made you finally kind of retire, right? How was that decision? When did you decide to kind of hang in the boots?
Yeah. So I mean, it's such a tough call to make, and I've often been asked as a coach or as an observer, what do I think about this player not retiring or carrying on? And I was somebody who was seen to have retired from the game at the top of my career. So I'd had my 2 years in the wilderness of being dropped out of the test side, coming back in and then averaging 50 in those last 2 years, and then retiring, but still playing in the one days, because then for 3 years prior to the World Cup in South Africa, I wanted to play in the World Cup in South Africa. So it was just a case of me saying, well, I was in an era where for 27 years, not a single South African had played for the country. So when players tell you it's a privilege, it is a privilege to play for your country, it really is. But in my case, I was one of 14, 15 players, and it was an insane privilege.
Yeah.
Because the country wasn't a democracy. We shouldn't have been playing. So, I had 11 years of cricket more than I had ever expected.
Correct.
I wasn't expecting to play cricket for South Africa ever. And maybe at the end of my career, something might have happened. But by then, I would probably have missed the opportunity. So I think from that point of view, I'm just really grateful. From the timing was right. Everything that I did just seemed to work out, and there was such incredible anticipation and following and love for the South African team that I was just kind of bowled along with it.
Jonty, I think the meal was super heavy.
Yes.
Should we take like a short walk on the beach?
It's going to be warm. I'm going to warn you now.
Yeah, that's okay.
It is going to be warm out there, but yeah, that's what we have.
Let's do
for.
that.
Cool.
So, Jonty, post retirement, you went and worked for a bank in South Africa.
I did.
How was that experience? And post that, how did coaching happen? Right, because you came into the whole coaching scene a little later than most, and now you're very active right? Not only in India, but even internationally, whether it's with leagues or whether it's with national teams. Uh, it's like you're kind of reinventing yourself in that space. So, how did coaching come to you?
Well, that's pretty much a part of life too. I mean, you never stop growing and never stop learning, and I think as a cricket player, you understand that if you perfect something, somebody is now trying to find a way to get you out. So you're
Yeah.
continually learning. So the evolution of the coaching was at the end of my career when I retired in 2003. If you wanted to coach, you had to coach your own country because there
Yeah.
was no IPL, there were no other franchise leagues around the world, and it was generally an ex-player that then ended up coaching his country's team.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't an option. I mean, I retired playing my best cricket, and coaching would have meant I would have to go away with the team. So I started working for a bank. I have a commerce degree. And the fascinating thing was business banking. So I was in
Yeah.
Durban, and it's very much a port city. And I thought, I don't have any experience whatsoever in business. So
Yeah.
I've got my degree, and I've been playing cricket for the last 12 years. So let me learn from other people who are in business.
Yeah.
And with the banking, you learn about product and policy and procedure. So every day was like, again, being back at school.
Yeah.
But, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So I from a point of view where I traveled around the world, had this incredible opportunity to play cricket, it wasn't boring being a banker.
Yeah.
And everyone kept saying, how can you be a banker? Just, I suppose it depends on your attitude towards whatever you're doing.
And you
But
were
I
always
was
a team player
wholeheart-
anyways.
I was
so-
also wholeheartedly in.
Yeah.
I was learning things every day. And kind of at the age of 35, you think, man, I didn't even know this stuff.
And I saw
so-
that you went in, did it for 6 months or a year. You
No,
spent
I was.
how many? 6, 7 years?
I was there until 2011, so nearly 7 years. But
7
the
years.
fortunate thing for me was at the end of a year, we then launched Pro 20 cricket in South Africa.
Yeah.
So, I'd played in Gloucester for one season. There had been a T20 league there. And I came back and told her, because the bank, Standard Bank, where I worked, was the white ball sponsor in South Africa. So it was only 50 over and Test cricket. Those are the two options that you had.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, let's launch Pro 20. We called it the Pro 20. So marketing in Standard Bank literally went to Cricket South Africa and said, we have this product.
Yeah.
You need to own it, but we will run it. And it was incredible because suddenly...
What year was this in?
2004, 2005.
So you all were pretty much the
Yes,
inventors of
which is
T20
also,
cricket in that sense.
I mean, we had been playing, there was a sort of a one-day tournament every summer in South Africa because 4 of the state teams were sponsored by the same sponsor.
Yeah.
And they had in Cape Town always, because it was longer hours in the day in the summer, they would have 2 semi-finals and a final of T20 cricket. But teams were scoring 90 and 100 and getting bowled out in 14 overs. We had no idea how to play T20.
Yeah.
It was just a fun day. The crowd came in and loved it. End of the day, there was a trophy, 3 matches were played. So T20 cricket was just entertainment. And in fact, the bank coined the phrase sportainment. So it's pretty much what we're doing here,
Yeah.
Dream Set Go. I mean, everything it's no longer just the event, but what is happening around the
Correct.
event? What can
The
you
entire
get from it?
experience and the
And,
entertainment.
and we
around
had
it, yeah.
we were handing out miners' hats, so the first 1,000 people that walked into the stadium, because
Yeah.
we said, the ball's going to come flying out the park, so wear a helmet because it's keep an eye on the game.
Yeah.
And it was all then about what are the fans experiencing. We had the dancers, we had the fireworks, so all of that came out of
Correct.
Standard Bank sponsor.
Yeah.
And then again, I was back in the team. Graham Smith actually asked me to come coach the South African team up to the 2007 World Cup
Yeah.
in the Caribbean. So no teams had fielding coaches in those days. So I was the first guy that was then back in.
So
And
he's the
Standard-
perfect first guy to be the
Well,
fielding coach, right?
And
So-
Standard Bank were quite happy for me because I was still involved with the sponsorship, and
Yeah.
the sponsorship included activities with the team, and they needed that personal relationship with the players, and,
Yeah.
and they were quite happy for me to fulfill that role at the bank. So it worked really, really well. And I was just grateful because even though I'd retired from the game,
Yeah.
I was still passionate about cricket, so I could be involved from a different aspect. And it taught me a massive lesson, Monish, because, as players, we always think the game's about us. It's where would you be without the players? You can't
Yeah.
play the game without the players. But everybody, the fans, the sponsors, everybody is a stakeholder in cricket. And
Yeah.
and we forget we all have a role to play.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
without one, yes, you can't play. But without the other 4 or 5 stakeholders,
It doesn't come together.
doesn't.
Yeah.
And that was so important that at least I had that experience of being a player
Yeah.
and being able to talk to a couple of the grumpy current players, say, hey guys, just you might not like the fact that on your day off you've got to come spend it with our clients.
Yeah.
But these guys are actually paying your salary. So let's remember, and they're doing it not because they've got money to burn, but because they want the game to grow.
Yeah.
So I think that for me was a really exciting time to be involved with cricket, because we then hosted that inaugural 2007 T20 ICC World Cup, which Dhoni came with a younger team, guys beat Pakistan. I mean, and from then T20 cricket just went off, like those fireworks around the ground.
Yeah.
And it was amazing, a bit like when I was playing for South Africa in 1992 out of the wilderness.
Yeah.
Being a part of that T20 evolution, it really was amazing. So
skyrocketed.
And then from there, obviously, the coaching then evolved. Because I'd done the coaching work with South Africa, with Graham Smith, the first IPL was in 2008. There weren't any fielding coaches.
Yeah.
So Mumbai Indians were playing, and I think they needed to win one of their last 2 matches to qualify for the playoffs. Sean Pollock was playing. Sachin Harbhajan, I think Sachin was actually injured that season quite badly. He didn't play a lot of the games.
Feeling wasn't very good, right?
But in the last 2 matches, they'd missed catches and missed opportunities that cost them the game. And Sean Pollock said to Nita Babi, do yourself a favor. They phoned me the next day. Please come to Mumbai. We would like you to come in. And that was it. I mean, for me.
How many years did you spend with Mumbai Indians?
9 seasons with Mumbai Indians. It took us a while to win a trophy.
Yeah.
Once we got the hang of it, we got pretty good at it. And 2015 and 2017, when we had children in Mumbai during the IPL. So India was born 2015. Mumbai Indians won the trophy. Nathan was born the night of the final 2017. It was when...
So you're a lucky charm for each other.
Well, so I think my wife just said, Jonty, no more trophies, no more children. Mumbai Indians are saying, how many more babies can you have? We need more trophies. And Melanie just said, pass, that's enough. Those 2, they're plenty.
So you've got a rich coaching career now, right? You've 3 IPL teams, in the Swedish team, in South Africa with the SAT20. Did you coach?
Durban Super Giants.
Which other ones have you been coaching?
With Punjab, we spent 3 seasons when Anil Kumble went to be the head coach, and then Lucknow. So Lucknow, then obviously have a team in the SA20, the Durban Super Giants, and then Swedish.
You spent nearly 2 years there.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Wow.
So doing some work there. Also have coached in some of the Dubai-based events as well. So it's been an interesting journey, but especially for me as a fielding coach, because I was never taught how to field.
Yeah.
And that's the irony. So I actually talk about unlearning earlier on in the conversation when you first got to my home. I had to unlearn everything, because how do I explain to people who can't just do it? So when I was coaching South Africa in 2007, AB de Villiers, all these young players, Joe Callis, they could just do the things that I would say, because they had played with me in the setup. Now I'm trying to explain to coaches and other players who've never seen me play before. So this is how I got there. And this is what I did to get there.
Correct.
And it was me trying to understand the movements that I had. I mean, and I had to try and teach myself again how to throw. Almost had to try and teach myself how to throw left-handed, so I could explain without it just being habit and instinct. So it was an incredible evolution, but it also stemmed out of my passion for the game. And we don't always know where we're going to end up. But if you're fully committed to something, you give it everything, it'll be amazing the path that kind of in the doorways that open for you and kind of show you where you're meant to be.
I agree. And, for young founders like myself that are now starting to grow into a much larger team, building a strong management team under us, I'm looking at some kind of advice that even, people watching this podcast will look to gain some inspiration and seek some advice from. Is that how do you kind of manage different individuals as a coach? Different individuals that come with different backgrounds, different egos, insecurities, attitudes, and how do you kind of get all of them aligned together towards one common goal? People management is not easy.
Yeah, no.
It's probably one of the toughest things.
No.
And, any kind of advice that you have or how, insights from what you do that we could take a leaf out of.
Yeah, I think people management is the sort of backbone of most industries. So whether in your scenario, me as a coach, I mean, there's a couple of things. So obviously in the IPL, you have this incredible collection of talent, but from different cultures and different ways of playing the game and different understanding of roles, because some player for his national team might be batting at number 4 doing a specific role, but now you buy him in the auction and you want him to play at number 3 or bat at number 6 because you want him to be a finisher. So the first thing for us is good communication, and there's 2 things about good communication. There's one,
is the clarity of what you want the player to do. Because if he knows his job, he can do his role. Or he knows his role, he can do his job.
Correct.
Excuse me. So if he is not clear on that, it's very difficult for them to perform, no matter how good they are, because they might have been doing something completely different.
Yeah.
So that, that sort of communication the clarity is important. But for us too, a big part of communication is active listening. Because in India, there's no young Indian player that will tell you, Jonty, sir, coach. I say, please, I'm not a sir, Jonty or coach or Jonty, what? I don't understand what you said, or what are you asking of me? Because they will never admit they're not 100% on top of their game. They'll feel like it's a weakness rather than saying, hey, what did you say? What do you want me to do? They would rather not say anything. So there is not clarity. And I think what's been important for me is understanding that because I know this, is that when I listen to somebody, I don't listen with my ears only. I look at their whole body language. What's their body language telling me? And that's active listening. And the funny thing is it actually stemmed from watching Sachin Tendulkar bat, trying to stop him at backward point. Because when Alan Donald bowled the ball, I only focused on the bat. That's where the ball was coming from. Yeah. But for me to have good anticipation, try and get in the right place, anticipate where the ball was going to be, I had to watch Sachin's body language. Because the forward defense meant the ball was dropping here, and I had to run in from backward point. This position for the cut meant it was coming hard. I wasn't backing away, but the ball is coming hard, so I can defend it here. Yeah. So understanding that it was more than just what you focused on that's telling you something is really important. Because communication in any team, honesty we talk about in teams, but it's not honesty with the guy standing next to you. It's honesty with yourself. And it even
with the guy in the mirror.
It's even management. It's as important to take ownership of, not start blaming other players for performance or we were let down here. So if everybody takes ownership, it allows people to work for the team. So I think the communication is massive. The honesty is huge. And then just that active listening, man, because body language, and we all have that energy inside of us. We try and hide it, but you can't hide it. Yeah. You really can't. You can put on a brave face. Yeah. But if you spend enough time with people, which I think is important in a business environment, because you emails and meetings and you don't actually spend time with the person. Correct. And because at the IPL, you're there for 10 weeks now, in one hotel together, traveling every day, playing, practicing, you get to spend time. But it's easy to shut yourself away because it's so much time with people. Yeah. But you need to understand that there's a role of active listening, and that might just bring out the best in the player when you need it. Yeah. So
but I understand that actually, because we travel a lot with the business that we are in, and for tournaments, a huge part of my team is there, servicing thousands of clients around marquee tournaments, and you actually get to work closely together. There are times that there is stress, and there's times that you'll unwind when you've done a job really well. And I think building that personal bond with your team, when you take them out, when you communicate, you have a good time, it kind of helps understand each personality and then adapt your strategy accordingly to bring out their strengths and embrace their weaknesses and help them through it. Yeah. So, it's a great insight, and
because I just think one last thing around that teamwork for me is that one thing I've always been focused on was that, we all want to do the sexy things. We all want to land the big deal. But, in cricket, it's not going to be your day every day. Yeah. And as a coaching staff, we have these international players who can't make the IPL team because you can only have 4 overseas players. Correct. And sometimes the balance of the team, depending on the local players, will dictate that a great international player sits in the dugout. In the dugout. So how do you deal with all these egos? Because all of us have egos. You don't have to play for your country to have an ego. We all, this is what drives us. And it's, it can be good. And also what inhibits us at times because we don't want to be seen to be failing. But if we're a coaching staff and we're honest with each other, but how can we maintain this team collectiveness in an environment where there's 24 players and all 24 want to be in the 11, because that's where you get re-signed and you get all the sponsorships. But what we look for is players who are doing things outside the limelight, outside the lights. So if a senior player, international star, runs around the field as fast as possible with a bib on and he gets a drink to a young Indian fast bowler who's just bowled an over, we recognize it and then we appreciate it. We'll tell the player, hey, we saw that, thank you. Yeah. Because recognition and appreciation is not a reward. You don't go and have this for it, just appreciation. Yeah. Because I think we all want to be appreciated. And in a team environment, you want to see people doing things for the benefit of the team and not just themselves. Because it's not going to be their day. Yeah. They can't do the sexy stuff every day as much as they want to and as much as they train for it. But are they providing or adding to the positive energy?
Are you being good collaborators or are you being... great contributors to the rest of your team members.
we look for that contribution, and when we see it,
We appreciate
we recognize and we appreciate it, because then they keep doing it. Not
Great.
we're not asking them to take drinks but you see some of the senior players.
What's the extra bit you're putting in?
100%.
Right? How much of a team player are you?
And it's important for them to know that it's not a prerequisite. If they don't do it, that's fine. But when we see it, we appreciate it because we know what it's doing. It's not for their benefit, it's for the team's benefit.
And honestly, there's just so much to learn from sports because you can pick up all these values and attributes and directly apply it to your personal and professional life.
As I say, business and community and home life. I mean,
Right.
they really are great lessons.
Fantastic. In this next segment, I want you to keep quiet until you hear the name of the best fielder according to you. Right? So I'm going to...
All-round fielder.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a lot of names.
Okay.
And, the minute you think that you agree that this one's the best all-round fielder, you can take that name and stop me there.
Okay.
Right? Should we go?
You can go.
Yeah. Steve Smith, Faf du Plessis, Ricky Ponting, Herschel Gibbs, Paul Collingwood, Glenn Phillips, Virat Kohli, Kyron Pollard, David Miller, Brendan McCullum, Glenn Maxwell, Suresh Raina, AB de Villiers, Ravindra Jadeja, Andrew Simons.
Stop.
Andrew Simons?
For me.
The last name was Jonty Rhodes.
Nothing going to get to me. Yeah.
So you think Andrew Simons was the best all-round fielder?
Well, in a generation where T20 cricket was starting, prior to that, the best fielder never really moved out of his zone. Suddenly the hotspots came up, so the guys like Pollard, and Andrew Simons was the first player that I really believed such a strong, powerful arm from the boundary, but as a big man, could still dive around in the covers in T20 cricket, field under the helmet, short leg, in test matches. I mean, he was the ultimate all-round fielder, the initial ultimate all-round fielder.
Excellent. A great answer, actually. I'd agree with you. Next one is, of course, all our favorite, rapid fire. So you've got to pick one, right?
Okay.
Batting or fielding?
For me,
Yeah.
fielding, no option. Yeah.
Test cricket or ODI?
As a coach, ODI, as a player, Test cricket.
Surfing or motorcycling?
Oh, surfing. Whole family can join.
Goa beaches or Cape Town mountains?
Say no more. Goa beaches.
Royal Enfield or Harley Davidson?
I'm a Royal Enfield kind of boy.
Excellent choice.
Thank you.
Diving catches or run out?
Well, diving run-outs, do they count? There's like a combination of both. Diving catches, for sure.
It's the moment of the century. So, anyways, the next one. Hockey or cricket?
Cricket.
Indian spices or South African Brie?
Listen, a South African braai is something we all talk about forever and ever, and we pass on to our children. But, I live here 5 months of the year, and Indian spices are just superb. So, Indian spices.
Nice. Drills on the field or mountain trekking?
Drills on the field. I mean, I want to keep improving, and it's still movement. It's just your attitude towards work. Do you enjoy it, or do you find it like hard work?
Mumbai or Bengaluru?
For winning trophies? Did I say that? No, I love them both. So great places to visit.
Sachin Tendulkar or AB de Villiers?
As table tennis player, or as what?
As a greater batsman?
I'd have to say in his generation, AB de Villiers has been superb, but Sachin Tendulkar unmatched for so many years. So Sachin Tendulkar.
Traditional South African food or Indian street food?
Indian street food. That's where I spent half my life.
Nice. What do you like?
Oh, everything.
Pani puri?
Well, it just depends. Whichever city I'm in, I'll always find what's there and what's relevant. I'm not going to go looking for something if I'm in. I mean,
nice.
Rajasthan, it's a lassi, almost on the street.
Amazing. Yoga or gym workouts?
Yoga.
Great answer.
Thank you.
Sunrises or sunset?
Well, it's hard to beat again. This on the beach on Goa, but I think living in Cape Town the other 6 months of the year, we are an early rising family. So sunrises for us are when we want to get up and about.
Insane way of getting some amazing energy for the day.
For sure.
So, great. I think with the next segment, I'm going to take two names, head to head. You have to tell me who's the better fielder out of the two of them.
Better fielder.
Sachin or Lara?
BC Lara, I love the man. He did not like fielding. So Sachin Tendulkar.
Okay. Jadeja or Raina?
Best left-handed fielder, Jadeja. Best right-handed fielder, Suresh Raina. That's impossible.
I know you love both of them.
I love them both.
Virat or Root?
In what position? Listen, Virat, if you watch him in a T20 game, in fact, young players, watch him when he's fielding, not on the boundary, but in the circle. He does unrewarded work. He gets to the stumps every single time. So willingness to do unrewarded work, remember that. Watch Virat Kohli and see what he does.
Maxwell or Pollard?
So Polly, massive hands. Maxi does impossible things, but yeah, I'm a Mumbai Indians guy for a long. I mean, I've worked with Maxi.
Yeah.
But Karen Pollard, for me, started that boundary work.
Yeah.
I mean, I never realized what players could do. So it was thanks to Karen Pollard that I started focusing as much attention on boundary protecting. So thanks, Polly.
Yeah, I'm a Mumbai boy and a Mumbai Indian fan, so Kyron Pollard all the way. And Ponting versus AB.
Again, such a tough, different eras. But I think Ricky Ponting, if I consider where I played in the generation that I played, he was somebody who I thought just hit the stumps all the time. He fielded in the slips when he shattered his ankle chasing the ball to the boundary. So I think Ricky Ponting is just an all-round, all-heart cricket player. And, as much as I love ABD, I'm going to have to go with Ricky Ponting.
Oh, this was great fun, right? This is one of the best rapid fire rounds that we've had.
It wasn't.
I think to wrap this segment, Jonty, I'd like for you to tell us which is, according to you, the best catch you've ever taken.
Best catch. It's interesting because I don't remember too many specific memories. I am reminded often about a catch I took of Sachin Tendulkar diving to my left in Durban.
Yeah.
Because every time I come to India, I bump into Sachin fans who say, Jonty, that ball, it bounced. You caught it like this. And so just because an Indian guy couldn't catch it doesn't mean a South African guy couldn't catch it. So Sachin walked straight away. He and I were friends and he didn't stand there to question me. But I think the one day was Vankedi, before Vankedi, Brabant Stadium, CCI, Cricket Club of India, where we played all our cricket. I caught 5 catches in a one-day game against the West Indies. You might even been a little boy.
I was
sitting
there.
In the
I was
stand.
9 years
so
old.
It wasn't one catch. It was 5
That was
catches,
5 catches that day.
Which I was told afterwards was a world. I mean, I didn't even know there was a world record for fielding.
I think
just
it's
love fielding.
25,000 of us in the stadium.
Jonty.
And I remember Jonty.
Crazy.
It was an amazing moment, right?
So that for me, it's not one catch, just that entire day that stands out. Just a special day in my entire cricket career.
Fantastic. But I also thought that you took some incredible catches against the Australians. Like incredible. I remember this one catch of Matthew Hayden.
Yeah.
I think he cuts the ball and you just go flying in the air. And I was like, wow, how does he do it? He's the flying man.
Listen, when the Australians play against you, you've got to bring your A game.
Yeah.
I like to think my A game was at practice, no matter who I was playing against. But generally, when you got half an opportunity against Australia, you wanted to take it because, they had so many quality batters that it was a case of if you miss this one, they're going to make you pay.
Jonty, this has been an incredible day. Getting to know you personally has been an incredible opportunity for me. And I'm so grateful for this experience. Just before we sign off, wanted to understand what's next for Jonty Rhodes, right? What are you looking forward to? What are the amazing things that you're doing or looking forward to?
Well, I mean, the day is setting, so it's been an incredible day. So thank you for your time. I know how busy you are. But, based in India for a particular reason, and I do a lot of corporate talking. I've obviously done coaching in the past, and I've just resigned from T20 coaching because I've sort of found that you have an impact on 20 people, 24 people. But on the corporate coaching side and the corporate wellness side, you have such an incredible opportunity to make a massive difference. And I think that's what excites me about the future. Yes, I'm passionate about cricket and I love the coaching. And I think for a season, it was amazing. And there might be another season. I don't write it off, but right now, I'm focused on my corporate engagements, but specifically also around the corporate wellness. Because, prior to the pandemic, I was concerned about the state of the nation, not just in India, but in South Africa too. Yeah. But here in India, I feel I can make a difference.
No, that's fantastic. And, we are nearly an 80-member team now. We're growing fast. But I think there's just so much opportunity of doing something with Jonty Rhodes for our team to ensure that there is mental health, wellness, growth, prosperity, and a good work-life balance around all of this, right? So looking forward to engaging with you for that. And I think a lot of corporates should embrace that now because, while it is about discipline, partnership, teamwork, ownership, performance, it's also about kind of a well-rounded overall growth for your team and for your overall organization. So thank you so much, Jonty Rhodes. You've been an absolute inspiration. For the last 3 decades, people have looked up to you and you just continue doing amazing stuff.
Thank you.
You were an inspiration. You are an inspiration. I'm sure you're always going to be an inspiration.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
similar to this, but you really feel like
So
you're
I
on top
think
of each
what
other.
we'll do is I have a question that I want to ask.
Cricketers while y'all were here or not? Y'all didn't? So actually when all these cricket, now with IPL it's different, but when all of y'all were...
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks, Monish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.